Hey y'all, welcome to the Quackery. I'm a local Taylor resident doing my best to break down what's happening in our city government in a clear, accessible, and no nonsense way. From council meetings to board decisions to all the fine print in between, I'm here to translate it into plain language so you always know what's going on in your own backyard. Let's dive in. The next thing happening at City Hall is the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. That's taking place on Tuesday, December 2nd at 6 o'clock in the evening, over in the City Hall Council Chambers at 400 Porter Street. And even though the ZBA doesn't always get the spotlight, it's one of the most powerful boards in our local government. That's because the ZBA is a quasi-judicial board, meaning their decisions are legally binding and city council cannot overturn them. The ZBA's main job is handling variances, requests to break the rules in the Land Development Code, but only when a property meets very specific hardship criteria under both local law and state law. And to approve anything, they need at least 75% of the board present, and 75% of those present have to vote yes. They'll begin by calling the meeting to order and opening up the floor for citizens' communication, which is where anyone can speak for 3 minutes on topics not listed elsewhere on the agenda. After that, the board will take care of a little housekeeping by reviewing and approving the minutes from their October meeting. Once that's done, they'll roll into the main event of the night, a request for a signage variance for the new Ringer Windows building at 201 Mustang Cove in the Mustang Creek Industrial Park. The applicant is asking for permission to install 2 building-mounted signs with lettering larger than the city normally allows. The big one is a 36-inch letter sign facing Carlos Tucker Boulevard, which is double the maximum allowed by the Land Development Code. The second sign, on the south side of the building, uses 18-inch letters, which already comply with the rules. But because both signs are part of the same application, they're treated together. The applicant explains that the building is extremely large, over 44,000 square feet, and sits far from the roadway, which makes standard-sized letters harder to see from Carlins Parker Boulevard. Their argument is that oversized letters would actually reduce driver distraction because they'd be easier to read quickly from a distance. Staff reviewed the request and made 2 important findings. First, they say the request does meet all 4 of Taylor's local hardship standards. Those standards look at things like whether the property's size or surroundings create a unique situation, whether the request is necessary for the owner to reasonably use the property, whether granting it would harm public health or safety, and whether the variance is the minimum needed to address the issue. In this case, staff felt the unusual scale of the building, its distance from the roadway, and the fact that the sign still stays within the overall size limits all support a hardship under Taylor's local code. But second, and this is critical, staff also found that the request does not meet any of the state hardship standards under Texas local government code. Those state standards look at things like whether compliance would cost more than half the property's value, or whether following the rules would make a big portion of the lot unusable, or cause the structure to break another ordinance, or force it onto someone else's property, or whether the building is already legally non-conforming. None of those apply here. So while the request meets local hardship criteria, it doesn't meet the state's much stricter definitions. Once staff finishes their presentation, the board will open a public hearing, giving anyone who received a 200-foot notification, or anyone from the public who attends, a chance to speak for or against the variance. After public comment closes, the board will deliberate and vote. If the board votes to approve the variance, it means they've determined that the property's unique characteristics justify an exception to the letter height rules. Approval would allow the larger sign to move forward, potentially improving visibility for customers and making the building easier to identify from the road. Some see that as a practical fix for an unusually large industrial site. If the board votes to deny the variance, then the applicant will have to stick with the standard 18-inch letters required by the Land Development Code. That maintains consistency with the city's signage rules and avoids creating a precedent for oversized letters on other buildings, though it may make the sign harder to read from Carlos Parker, given the building's scale and setback. And after the vote, the meeting wraps up. Thanks so much for watching the Quackery and staying engaged with what's happening here in Taylor. Your time, attention, and curiosity truly matter. Local government works best when all of us are paying attention. More ducks in the pond, more voices in the conversation.